Hello and welcome everyone to the Mindful Running podcast. Foot pain and blisters is something most of us have to deal with in our hobbies, and this can be very limiting. Running, hiking, and adventure sports place extreme demands on our feet. Today, we talk about proper foot care and a few good tips and tricks that will help keep our feet out of trouble. Our guest today is John Vonhof. He's an ultra runner, foot care expert, and an author. He has volunteered his knowledge and services at running events across the globe, patching up thousands of feet. He spends time speaking to runners and hikers about being good stewards of their feet. With more than 20 ultramarathons under his belt, including competing 3 times in the 100-mile Western States Ultra and 10 times in the Santa Rosa 24-hour track run, John is known for his expertise in helping athletes at races and events needing foot care. He has worked from single day to multi day events and conducted workshops on foot care around the world. His book, Fixing Your Feet, which I have here, is an encyclopedia of information on foot care. It has anything and everything that you need to know, from foot basics, footwear basics, prevention, and treatment. We hear more about this in our conversation. With this, I welcome John.
Thanks for having me.
How are you, John? Good morning.
I'm very good. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to speak to somebody halfway around the world.
Yeah, right. It's evening here and actually halfway around the world.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so good to have you, John. And actually, I have a few questions which will definitely not do justice to this particular conversation, but we'll see. I mean, the maximum that we can get out of this. So yeah, so we'll jump right in. So just to start with, John, I know that feet is one thing that we don't talk about much, and runners mostly rely on aid stations and someone else to do it for them. Everyone should know how to take care of their feet. And you mentioned a quote, in fact, a lot of lovely quotes from different people around the world in your book. And, one of them is by Lisa Bliss, who is the former medical director at Badwater Ultra Marathon. And she says, if runners think we are there for blister care, then we will not take care of the time or effort to learn more about it themselves and train appropriately in advance of the race. I don't mind helping. I just don't want runners to be helpless about prevention and treatment. So that was one. And there is another one by Billy Trollen, who says the one factor that continues to amaze me is that individuals and teams will spend vast amounts of money and time and thought on training, equipment, and travel, but little or no preparation on their feet. Too often, the result has been that within a few hours to a few days, all that work has been ruined. Ruined because the primary mode of transportation has broken down with blisters. So, why do you think, John, that people do not think much about their feet? Is it because no one has ever told us how to take care?
Yeah, that is a superb question. And those were two excellent quotes because they're so true. Um, People rely on other people. Often it's easier to go to a race or run and let somebody else take care of you. It's something often I think that's ingrained in many people's spirit. So it's difficult because when people go out to run, whether it's just a casual run or a race, I mean, they put their shoes on. They pull their socks on, they put their shoes on, and they don't pay them a whole lot of thought. They spend more time thinking about, do I have the right pair of shorts or shirt? And, are they the right color? And they just don't think that much about their feet. I've seen people do these multi-day events where they spend all the time thinking about their pack and their food and their gear, but they don't think about their feet. So it's very common. They just don't think about it the way that they should.
Yeah, is it because like there is not enough awareness or no one's really talking about it? Because people can speak with experience. I mean, someone's got a blister, someone's race got ruined because of that. They will probably come back and tell their friends, and that's how the awareness probably grows.
I don't know how it is in India, but over here, many of the events have people on a medical team. And so they sometimes have supplies. I have my foot care kit and box. And when I work an event, I take care of the runner's feet. That's why I'm there. But runners often get used to it. At Badwater, that you mentioned in Death Valley, there's one runner in particular. I've taped his feet multiple times, and it can take an hour, hour and a quarter, and uses a bunch of supplies. And I finally told him, look, Mark, you need to figure out how to do this because I won't always be here. And I've done this a lot. So sorry, Mark, but I need to charge you because, I'm using my supplies. So people need to stop relying on other people because you may run a race, a marathon, and have trouble with your feet and go into an aid station, and there may be somebody there, but they can only fix your feet to the extent of their knowledge. And if you, for instance, have figured out that your feet need lubricant instead of powder or powder instead of lubricant, and they don't have that stuff there, then what are you going to do? So better to take care of yourself and know what your feet need.
Yeah, and I was just thinking that when you actually go for all these multi-day races, and if the runners get to know that you're going to be there, they'll be just relieved. They'll be like, okay, more the reason
Yeah.
we know
Yeah.
someone is going to take care of us.
Yeah. But it can be difficult, especially at a multi-day event, because sometimes people, they finish the stage. Some of these are stage events. They're not continuous. They're staged. They go from point A to point B on day one and so forth. And at the end of the day, sometimes they take the tape off their feet and then they come to me in the morning and they want me to retape their feet. And often I just don't have all the supplies for it. And I said, no. Leave the tape on your feet. Don't destroy what I've done.
Yeah.
So folks don't often think. They just, if there's somebody there to help them, they're more than happy to take advantage of it.
Right. And what are the three main things? I mean, I'm sure there are like not three, there are like many. So why don't you show us your foot care kit that you have and what all really goes in there?
Oh boy, I'm not sure how I can do this. So this is my foot care box, and in that box, there's tapes. I have special scissors. I'm not sure. Let me back off here
Yeah.
some angle, right? Let me see. Not sure how to do this. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, there we go. So
Yeah.
tapes and scissors, toenail clippers, gauze. Alcohol wipes to get the oils off the skin. Underneath, I have, and a shoehorn, something as simple as a shoehorn, because if I tape somebody's heels and I put tape around the back of the heel, I don't want them just jamming that taped foot into their shoe. I want to ease it in, with the shoehorn. Inside the kit, I keep all kinds of towels, but I have lubricants. I have sticky stuff that make the tape stick more. Squirrel's nut butter. It's a lubricant, which is really, really good. Powder. There's just a whole assortment of things, and I can do quite a bit just out of this box. I keep nail files. I keep just all kinds of special scissors and tools. When I take care of a blister, I use a scalpel instead of a pin, and later on I can explain why. So I found over 20, almost 25 years of working on feet that this is the stuff that I need. And so I keep that. And then if I'm doing a multi-day event, I generally have a separate container that has extra of all this stuff too.
Yeah. And so if someone is participating in a multi-day race, John, these are the items that should go in the kit that the crew of that person will keep. These are the essentials that you keep.
Yes and no. It depends how detailed and how complicated they want to get. In the back of Fixing Your Feet in the book, I have a chapter on foot care kits. And I talk about a kit that could go in your hydration pack or a fanny pack.
Yeah.
You can even take a Ziploc bag and put some stuff in it and pin it to your shirt or put it in your pocket or something. But I also go into a larger kit and then a full-size kit. So I identify everything in there. But if your feet need certain things, then you need to have stuff in there for that problem area. If you have Morton's foot, where the second toe is longer than the
Right.
large toe, you may need a scissors, a special trauma scissors, to cut out part of your shoe over that toe to give your toe space. You may need extra tape if you've got bunions to tape over that area, or toes that under and overlap. There's all
Yeah.
different things that can go wrong. And so what the shape that your feet are and what they bring to the event is what you have to have stuff for.
Right. Yeah. We have some comments from our audience, John. I'll just put them up. Wow, awesome feet toolkit. Uh, then we have another one that could make a woman's vanity case look ordinary.
True, true.
Yeah, and didn't imagine so many things go into foot care.
Well, I'm the extreme, because when I work an event, I'm there to help, maybe 100 to 400 runners. I've been to multi-day events where I've been, 10 days, 11 days, 12 days, where I've got all my kit and I've got to have enough supplies for whatever might happen. Does somebody have an ingrown toenail that has to be fixed? I need special stuff for it. Do they have nails that have to be filed down? Do they have, just whatever comes up? I need to have what it takes. But the average person doesn't have to have all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. I think it also depends on the kind of race you're going, the terrain, what is it that the person might encounter, weather
Certainly.
conditions. Yeah.
In India, how many races are on trails, dirt trails, and how many are on roads? What percentage?
Yeah. So I think roads are more popular,
Okay.
but trails are also picking up now. And some trails could get technical.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so I'll just move on to shoes and socks, John, because that is one area that is applicable to just about everyone. It's not just about ultra running, and and again, I will just quote another quote from your book, which you kind of picked up from this website called foot.com. And that says the average person takes about 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day, which adds up to about 115,000 miles over a lifetime. That's enough to go around the circumference of the earth 4 times. And ill fitting shoes bring on problems. So, what role do good quality socks and shoes play? And how can one find out what works best? Because shoes definitely, I mean, it's common, it's popular, but still we go wrong. But socks is something, that is kind of underplayed a bit because people take socks for granted. So just looking at both socks and shoes, how can one find out what works best?
Well, I almost hate to say this, but you find out what works best by finding out what doesn't work. So, for instance, cotton. Cotton is
Yeah.
terrible for socks because it absorbs moisture. It gets damp. It doesn't wick moisture to the outside of the sock. It keeps moisture against your foot, and that softens the skin. So um, socks are great. There's some excellent socks out there, both from synthetic materials to wool, um, that keep the feet warm if it's cold and cool if it's hot. And they wick moisture, or they hate moisture. They won't even, they're actually water hating fabrics. And so the moisture goes to the outside of the sock. Socks are fantastic. There's some excellent socks out there, and there's thin socks and there's thick socks. There's liner socks. There's over socks. There's so many different kinds, but the sock you buy, number one, has to fit your foot. Number two, has to fit inside your shoe. So if you have a fairly tight fitting shoe and you buy thick socks because maybe it's the cold season, those socks are too much compression on your foot, and that impedes circulation. So wear socks that fit inside your shoe, and then check them every so often. Are there holes in them anywhere? Are they getting threadbare on the heels or the forefoot? Socks here in the States can cost anywhere from $10 up to $35 for one pair of socks. But we have unlimited socks here. And, I just point that out because you don't there. And so you have to be very careful. So don't just go into your local department store or whatever store and pick a pair of cotton socks. Try to find something synthetic or wool, and spend a few dollars more, and then wash your socks when they're dirty. Turn them inside out, wash them. Socks are huge, but then there's shoes too. And how many shoes are there? I mean, several years ago, I thought it was funny because Under Armour, if you've heard of Under Armour, Under Armour made underwear. And so here's or a underwear company that's now making shoes. And I thought it's so strange. And there's all these new people coming in and making shoes because running and walking and all these sports they're just opening up the shoe market. So they want a piece of the market. So they're making shoes. And there's some excellent shoes out there too. I mean, there's the big companies like Nike and Asics and Merrell and Hoka that make excellent running shoes. But there's new shoes coming out from new companies all the time too. If you've got a running store, hopefully, that you can go in and try shoes on, then do that. Find shoes that fit well and that you can run maybe in the store a little bit and make sure they fit. The shoe has to fit your longest toe in the length, and the toe box has to be high enough that your toes don't hit the top of the toe box if you're running like downhills or something. And they have to be wide enough to give your toes some space in there. The heel should not be moving up and down either. The shoe should fit your foot. You don't want to have to force your foot to fit the shoe. And so when you tie the shoe over the top of the foot, you don't want to have added pressure on that area of the foot either. So find shoes that fit your feet and try shoes on at the end of the day after you've been walking on your feet all day and your feet are swollen some. And take your socks in there to try the socks on with the shoes you're hoping to buy.
Yeah. And that's a very good tip, John, because that is something we don't do. I mean, I don't do. So no one carries socks with them, to a shoe store. But that's a very simple and a very good tip that you just gave us.
Well, the other point is that if somebody goes in and tries shoes on and doesn't have socks on, they're putting their feet in those shoes. And say they have athlete's foot, and then you come along to shop at the store and put your feet in those shoes, you could get athlete's foot.
Right.
See, so have your socks. Take them when you go to buy shoes.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah. And you had also mentioned in your book that you should always take the size of your foot standing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
As you stand, your feet spread out some, the bones spread out, and you can see how long your shoes are. Move your toes up and down, so you should be able to see a little bit of movement on the top of the toe box to where your large toe ends, and have about a finger's width between the front of your toe and the front of the toe box.
Yeah. And in fact, I will just talk about your book. This, I mean, if runners, or anyone who wants to take care of their feet, if they can get hold of this book, this is really a Bible and an encyclopedia, of information that John has put in here. I have the 6th edition, and I believe the 7th one is now out.
Here's the 7th one. I'll hold it back.
Yeah.
It has 74 more pages than the book that you have. And it's the best one. And I mean, 7 times this book has been updated, and every issue we go through, we update all of the products. We give changes on techniques and materials. For instance, in your book that you have, the 6th edition and older, it talks about like cold. If you sprain your ankle, cold and rest, ice elevation, compression. But that's changed now. It isn't rice anymore. There's better ways to manage your feet if you need heat or cold. So that's explained in here too. So we add anything new. So now, even though this book has been out a month, I already have a file of stuff I'm putting new things in if we update to an 8th edition at some point. So it's a lot of fascinating content.
Yeah. And in fact, I'll talk about your book a little later. Just some comments here, John, that I'll put up. I didn't know I had Morton's toe.
Yeah. Morton's toe is very common. So Morton's toe, Morton's foot, it's the same thing, but it's when that second toe is longer than the large toe. And so you have to buy your shoes with enough space for that longest toe. Some people, if they're in a road race and that that toe or their toenails bothering them because of Morton's toe, will actually sorry about that, will actually cut out a hole over the top of that long toe in their toe box, in their shoe, because it'll relieve the pressure on the toe.
Yeah. There's a question here, John. Are 5-finger socks better than regular socks for running?
Not necessarily. If you're prone to blisters between the toes or at the tip of the toe, then toe socks can be very helpful. They take getting used to because they feel different, because each toe has its own little sock.
Yeah.
I have some pairs of them. I like them. I know the companies well. There's several companies that make them now. Like I said, if a common problem for you is toe issues, then I would try toe socks. But that doesn't mean that they're that much better. Not everybody has to have a pair of toe socks. It's an option for those who need them.
Got it. Another note here on your book. John's book is a Bible for foot care. Thanks, John, for sharing the wisdom.
Oh, you're very welcome. It is There were times in the past when I would work on a new edition and I go, I'm really getting tired of feet. But I have done this for so long, and I get fired up because I actually have hundreds of photos of bad feet. I mean, feet that would turn your stomach just because they didn't do proper care, or they have a blister that's just humongous. Um, and what I do, I like to help people. That's just me by nature. So I go to these events and I take my own stuff, my foot care box, um, and I set up shop. I have all my, I have chairs, I have tables, I have all my gear, and I help people that don't know how to do it themselves. But when I work on someone's feet, I will tell you, because this is important, as I work on their feet and I take their shoes and socks off and I'm patching their feet, I try to educate them at the same time. I tell them, here's what I see. Here's what you should know. Here's how you can help yourself the next time, because I can't be at every race,
Yeah.
obviously. And I'm getting old too. So who knows how long I'll be around, and at some point, I've often said, I get tired of people, and this is very candid. I get tired of people who rely on us all the time, because ideally, you would take the time to figure out what your feet need. Do they need powder? Do they need lubricants? Learn how to take care of your toenails. I'm a stickler on good toenail care. Learn how to tape your feet if you have issues. And don't wait until something bad happens to learn. Look, study the book. I mean, read what's relevant to you and then learn from that. Yeah.
Yeah. Some more comments, John. Interesting revelations on socks and shoes. A question here on flat feet. Any shoe recommendation for flat feet?
Well, again, it gets back to, you've got to go into a shoe store or shoe outlet and try some shoes on, because if you have flat feet, you may need something with more of an arch support in it, uh, to support your arch, even though you really don't have one. So, what is comfortable for your feet? And many shoe stores will allow you to try the shoes on, take them outside, run up and down the street several times and go, are they comfortable? And then take the shoes home, wear them in the house, and make sure that they fit well. Are they comfortable? I mean, if you put a shoe on and it doesn't feel comfortable, then that's not the right shoe for you. So if you have a certain condition like flat feet, bunions, Morton's foot, and so forth, narrow heels, you've got to find what works for your feet. And it
Right.
may take some trial and error.
Yeah. So comfort is the first thing that people should keep in mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Another question, John. Really fascinating and helpful podcast. What sort of foot care would you advise for skipping or other high impact exercise?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by skipping, but if it's a
Like
form
a
of,
skipping rope,
oh, jump rope.
jump rope.
Okay.
Yes.
You'd want something with some good cushioning, because you're bouncing up and down as you're jumping rope. And when you do that, you're more on your forefoot. I don't think you land on your heels.
Yes, 4 foot.
So you want some good cushioning in that forefoot. Your feet are moving so much in there because every time they come down, they spread out. So just a good cushioned shoe for something like that. Yes, certainly.
Yeah. And talking about shoes, John, I think, I've just noted another quote. I just love the quotes in your book, um, by an ultra runner called Tom McGuinness. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Which, he says that good boots and bad socks can be miserable. Cheap boots and good socks can be a dreamland.
Yeah, and there's truth to that. There's a lot of people who, whether it's because they don't have the money or they just don't want to put the effort into it or they're comfortable with what they wear, they don't go out and buy $30 socks. I mean, they may buy $10 socks or more inexpensive shoes as opposed to some shoes now $200, $250 here in the States. That's expensive. It truly is. Buy shoes that are seconds, that are last year's models, that kind of thing. But in the end, what truly matters is what fits your foot. Because if it doesn't fit, no matter how much you saved on it or how much you spent on it, it isn't going to work.
Yeah, true. We have another question here. Any remedy to prevent black toenails?
Oh, one of my good favorite subjects. You would be surprised at all the photos I have of toenails. So the best thing to do, and as I said earlier, I'm a stickler on toenail care. Trim your nails so they're short. Okay. You don't want long toenails. And then take a nail file, and I mean, this is important too, and go over and over and over and over the tip of the toe and the corners. So when you get done filing, you take your finger and you rub it up against the toe. You don't want to feel any nail edge or any corners because those can catch on your socks or catch or even hit on the toe box, the front of the toe box or the top of the toe box, and it can push your nail backwards, put pressure on the toenail, leading to blood under the toenail. And then if you've really, a lot of times if you have blood under the toenail, it hurts. It can be very painful. And you literally have to make a hole in the toenail. Or if you can see the blood or the fluid underneath the tip of the nail, then use a pin to go in underneath the toenail. It doesn't hurt because it's dead skin.
Right.
So you have to let the fluid out to relieve the pressure on the toenail. So buy shoes that have enough height in the toe box so your toes aren't hitting, and enough length in the toe box so your toes aren't hitting, especially if you're doing trail runs or even roads that have downhills because your feet go forward in the shoe. Yeah. So you need the right footwear, but then you need toenail care. And we have so many times gone to events and runners come in to have their feet worked on and they have blood under a toenail. They have blisters on the side of their feet or their side of their toes. And it's because their nails are too long. They're hurting themselves by not learning and doing proper toenail care. And we lecture people on it, really.
I was just about to say that it must be really annoying you that these are ultra runners who've been running for a long, long time, and something as basic as cutting your toenails and filing your toenails is something they haven't done.
And when we work on feet and aid stations, one station I worked at for years is 55 miles into a 100-mile run. And these runners come in and we work on their feet and I talk to them while I do it. And I'm saying, no, you need to really go home and work on your toenails. We're not doing it here. We don't have time for it. And often at that point, the toes are sensitive anyway. But you've got to take care of your toenails. And I patch their feet and I ask them do you have a clean pair of socks to put on? Oh, yes, here's my socks. And they hand me socks and I unroll them and I go, excuse me, are you really that bad that you hand me a pair of socks with holes in it? Really? I mean, make sure that you have socks that are good. I mean, help yourself here too. That's the name of the game. I can't do everything for you. So yeah, learn how to take care of your feet. What do your feet need? Very important. Very
Yeah.
important.
And talking about blisters, John, I think the most common problem with mostly ultra runners is blisters. And what's the science and mechanics behind it, and how does one really prevent it?
The $24,000 question. It's they form because there's friction and there's movement in your shoe. If you take your finger and you put it on the back of your hand and you move it around, okay, that's what happens in your shoe.
Right.
If you put it on the palm of your hand, it's thicker skin. And I mean, you can move your finger some, but the skin doesn't move. What happens with a blister is, generally speaking, the skin moves, and because of the pressure in there between the layers of skin, they start to form fluid in there, and a pocket forms and a blister starts. So you have to make sure your shoes fit right, your socks are good, and if you've got any movement in your shoe, make sure your socks, and if you use a lubricant, that'll help there too. They form because there's movement.
Right.
And that move, and there's a whole in-depth chapter on this very subject in the book. It isn't something that I can say, okay, if you do this one thing or two things, it'll solve everything. Because people have told me, oh, I've never had a blister in my life. And I go, okay, that's fine. And I'm happy for you. But someday you will get one. And then it becomes a matter of, will you know what to do?
Right.
So even a small blister that's the size of a pea, really small, can hurt. If it's in a pressure area on the bottom of your foot between your toes, a real small one can hurt, where it can affect your gait, the way that you run, and the movement of your legs and your hips and everything else. So people often ask me, should I lance it? Should I open it up and get the fluid out? And the general rule of thumb, which is talked about in the book, just because it's been there for so long, is if it's maybe half an inch, then lance it and get the fluid out. My perspective on it is, if it's in a pressure area, I will lance it. I don't care if it's on the heel, on the ball of the foot, on a toe, side of the toe, top of the toe. I will get the fluid out, because in all my years, my 25 or so years of working on feet, a blister never gets smaller. They get bigger.
It only get bigger. Yeah.
They only get bigger, yes. And so you want to keep that from happening. So you have to learn, okay, if I've got a hot spot, take the time, take your shoes and sock off, make sure your socks are clean. Is there something rubbing there? Can you put a piece of tape over it to keep that hot spot from turning into a blister? Because that's what will happen next. And if you get one, stop and take the time to take care of it before it gets huge or has blood in it.
Yeah. And it's really a pity to see runners kind of end their race because of a pea-sized blister that they just can't deal with, when they have everything else in place.
Yeah. Yeah. And they've, often you read something at the opening of the interview here where, sometimes it just happens. Well, you spend all this money. Say you're just into casual running. You go out and you buy some shoes and some socks and some shorts and a shirt, and you run. Or you enter an event and you pay money to run this race, and you get a hydration pack or a fanny pack, and you get all this stuff, and you may have people helping you, but you don't think about your feet. So make the conscious effort to go, okay, how are my feet? Are they healed from the last time that I ran? Are they still, is the skin still healing from a blister I had 2 weeks ago? Take the time to repair any issues so it doesn't hinder you further on.
Yeah. And like you said, like people will carry backpacks and some kind of, weight on them and do these
Yeah.
multi-day races. So even like you mentioned in your book, like your biomechanics gets altered.
Yep.
And that probably makes you get these blisters and other things that kind of, again, hamper your run.
Yes,
Because
certainly.
those things are also supposed to be kept in mind because of the weight that we carry.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, if you're training for an event where you're going to be wearing a hydration pack on your back or something around your waist with water bottles on it, use those when you're training so your body gets used to the weight or the
Yeah.
jiggling if it's on your waist. I mean, take the time to go, okay, this hydration pack, it changes the way I run just a little bit, but maybe that little bit is enough to cause issues.
Yeah, because you've also mentioned in your book that each foot has 26 bones and, so many joints and, that make actually the foot really flexible.
Mm-hmm.
And there is just so much happening on the feet that, anything can make it go wrong because then we're just dependent on it like so much
Yes. And
on our feet.
what people sometimes realize after something bad happens is that the foot is the foundation. That's the bottom of your whole body. And that
Yeah,
every time you run and you come down on your heel or you come down on your forefoot and then toe off, all that movement gets transferred up the body. So every time your foot strike happens, you're sending almost, in some cases, jarring motions or shock waves up from the foot to the
yeah,
ankle to the knee to the hip to the back and everything else. So keep that in mind. I mean, some people run, they're very light on their feet. Other people, if they're heavy or they just don't have good running form, can be very jarring. And so make sure that you've got good footwear that'll help in that regard.
yeah. We have a question here, two questions, in fact, John. One is, are blisters and corns the same thing?
No. Oh, no, no, no. They're two separate things, separate chapters in the book on them, too.
Yeah.
Corn is kind of a thickened piece of callus, and they
Hmm.
often appear on the side of the toes, inside the toe, or even on the ball of the foot, too. Um, Not so much on the heels or arch area, but a corn just it's a small bump.
Right.
Uh, Most of them aren't that large, a pea or a kernel, but you can get special medications to put over them to help kill that corn. The corn often has a root that goes down into the deeper skin, so you can't just file them down. I mean, you can try certainly, but they don't always work. A blister is something formed because of
Friction.
movement in your foot and gets fluid in it. And so that fluid causes a bump in the skin, and that's what often hurts, is that fluid in there. If you keep running and don't get that fluid out or don't patch it, then it can expand to having blood in there, and then
Yeah.
it turns pink and red. And then if it pops on its own, or if I have to pop it at an aid station, don't make a face. It's just part of life. If you have blood in a blister, what you're doing is you're opening, and if it pops, I'm sorry, if it pops, you've now opened your whole circulatory system to the
Yeah.
potential of infection.
Yeah, right.
So
It's all
make sure
exposed.
that your tetanus shot is up to date. Make sure that you have some antibiotic ointment, something to patch over the top with, and you don't just naturally carry some of this stuff. So make sure that you have a good kit and know when to pop something if there's blood in it and how.
Yeah. Another question, John. For blisters, use lubricants. When should powder be used?
They can actually both be used for blisters. Some people's feet, if they put a lot of lubricant on, softens the skin and just gets too sensitive, so they use powders. The problem with powders, there's one or two that are really, really good, but often a powder will last. But feet have a lot of sweat glands in them, and they can sweat heavily. And I mean, there's some material in the book that talks about that. Powder then will not work as long because it gets damp and gets wet and it rubs off. So if you put powder on your feet, generally speaking, put the powder in the open sock, shake the sock, remove the sock to put the powder around the foot, and then put the sock on your foot.
Okay.
Lubricants are much more common, and they're generally they're easier to use, and they last longer too, especially nowadays. Like I showed you that squirrel's nut butter.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good ones out there that actually are made with ingredients that help with friction to cut down on it.
Yeah.
They bond to the skin and last longer. So lubricants are really good, and I mean that's typically what most people use.
Got it. And a question on how to disinfect shoes from different conditions like fungal, bacterial infections.
You can get spray, just any kind of a spray disinfectant. You don't necessarily have to soak your shoes because that's not real good for them, but they make little things to put inside your shoes that have disinfectant in them. There's
Right.
all kinds of sprays, and I mean they're mentioned in the book too.
Yeah.
Alcohol. Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. If you have athlete's foot or fungal infections in your toenails, you don't want to be sharing shoes. You don't want to be sharing socks with other people. Especially if it's fungal infection of a toenail, you need to take care of it, because that's another thing. It never gets better on its own. You need help, and there's different old school methods of Bengay and duct tape and all that kind of stuff that you can put over toenails or on toenails. Tree tea oil is a common one. Soak your feet in Epsom salts, very, very common, very helpful, just in general too. So
Very
athlete's foot.
relaxing too. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, you can take a bath in Epsom salts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So take care of the fungal infection, so you're not always having to treat the result of the infection, but you can ultimately take care of the cause that's there to start with.
Yeah. And that's like, you had quoted Tim Noakes in your book, like you treat the cause, like one of his taking care of running injuries, like you treat the cause first.
Yeah. And when people post pictures on Facebook of their blisters on their feet after a run, and I mean, one lady just the other day said, yeah, I had one gigantic blister on my foot. I go, okay, what happened? What caused it? That's key, because unless you figure that out, it can happen the next time too.
Exactly. Yeah. So, John, your book that I've been, referring to and, talking about, it's really an encyclopedia. I mean, just anything and everything about anything that I need to know, I will just look at it and I'll have the answer there. And this is the 6th edition. You have the 7th edition. So when did you start this? What's the story behind this book?
Years and years ago, back in 1992, I ran a 72-hour race.
Wow.
And 12 hours into it, I had a blister between my large toe and second toe. And a lady that I knew after doing 24-hour track runs, she took me into her motorhome and she showed me how to duct tape my feet. Well, I don't use duct tape anymore. I mean, there's better stuff out there, but that kind of sparked an interest in it, and that was in '92. So it probably took 2 years later on, because the first edition of Fixing Your Feet was 1997, and I published it myself, and it was like 190 pages. It was short compared to what we now have.
Yeah.
And it just sparked my interest. I interviewed people. The internet was coming on then, and I Googled stuff. I searched for stuff. I looked at publications out there. I subscribed to running magazines and everything else, and I found out a lot of stuff was old school and not up to date. So I just began compiling all this stuff. And actually, my son gave me the idea, and I always mention him in the dedication. I said, or he told me, he said, "Dad, you should write a book on feet because you've learned how to take care of your feet." And so that kind of sparked it. And so I wrote the book, and what was it? 1997, second edition in 2000, third edition in 2004, I think, and 2006, and then 2010. So now it's been about every 5 years. So at this rate, we should have an eighth edition in 2026.
Wow.
And I'm not even sure if I'll be here then. So what
Oh
can I
gosh.
say? So I mean, this seventh edition, I can honestly say, is the best one yet. And very, very honestly too, the sixth edition I was very proud of because it had so much new material in it, especially on friction and what's called shear, that movement on the hand I showed you, that shear where the skin is moving but the under layers are rubbing against each other. So every issue becomes bigger and better, and it's just been fascinating. And it's opened so many doors that's allowed me to go to foreign countries, and I've met people around the world.
Yeah. And in fact, John, that was my next question. Can you just share some? I mean, you've already, given us examples of people coming with their tattered feet that you have patched up. But any interesting examples or any stories that you want to share with us from your races?
We've had people that have come into our aid stations that have really bad athlete's foot. And the skin is actually the fungal infection. Athlete's foot has caused these ulcers, open wounds in between the toes, athlete's foot. And the guy worked in a running store and should have known better. I've had people who've come into an event with an ingrown toenail that doesn't get any better. It has to be patched and worked on. Totally wrong shoes for the event that they're doing. One thing that I mention in the book is Gators. If you know what a gator is, it goes around the top of the foot and covers the top of the shoe and the foot, so sand and dirt and dust and everything doesn't get down in the shoe. And I'm a stickler on Gators if you run trails because it protects the foot. So even though I've said that and I've harped on it for years, a lot of people don't wear them. So Gators are important, and I mean that can help you in many, many ways too. Folks come into an event where they have a mandatory medical kit. Here's what you need to have because it's a 7-day race. You're on your own the whole time. You carry all your food, all your clothes in a backpack, and you have to have this mandatory kit. And in the kit has to be a roll of tape and certain things. So their roll of tape is 1/4 inch wide, and it's paper tape, which is, it doesn't work. So they scrimp and they take the least amount of stuff that they need. And therefore they don't have the stuff that they do need. If you're going to run something, whether it's a marathon, a 100-miler, a multi-day event, train for that event. You've got to put the miles on your feet to get them in shape and used to holding your body weight and the pounding movement up and down. And if you carry a hydration pack on your back, your body has to get used to all that, but so do your feet. And if you haven't conditioned your feet, you're going to pay the price for it. If you're prone to ankle sprains, do balance exercises. Stand on a board, stand on one foot, and shut your eyes and balance yourself. Strengthen the ankles. There are ways to help yourself. And, not every race has a medical team. Not every race has people like me. And I've worked events in the Amazon jungle where it's sparse conditions. There is no hot water. There's wild animals. There's stuff that can hurt you, and other events in the cold and the ice and the snow and water conditions. So, learn about the events you're doing. If it's a simple road race, then oftentimes you're fine. But what can you do, you personally, what can you do to prepare your feet and know how to take care of your feet?
Yeah. And like you said, I think in like practice runs, because you're preparing for, these multi-day or marathons, you will know what to expect. I mean, your feet are getting used to it in training. You might, some things might be a big surprise, but kind of you might know because your feet are going through the same training. So to prepare yourself better.
Yeah. The common rule of thumb is if you're going to run a marathon, don't just do 4 and 5 and 6 mile runs. You have to get some longer runs out there, both for you to learn how your body handles it, how your mind handles it, and how your feet handle it. So do longer runs, 20 miles, 22 miles. That doesn't mean you have to run a marathon before you run your race marathon, but you do need some longer runs, definitely.
One question, John, any suggestions for Achilles tendon deformity conditions?
Well, you have to be very careful that you don't rupture the Achilles tendon, because that will require surgery. So often people will put a small pad in the heel of their shoe to lift the heel up and take some of that pressure off the tendon. I think the word there was deformity too. So if there's a bump on the back of the heel, that's something called Hageland's deformity. And often that's because of ski boots or just work boots or bad footwear. Sometimes that can be taken care of, with surgery. You might often want to just simply put a piece of tape over that bump to protect the skin too. Otherwise, it's rubbing there.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, there we go.
Connection. Yeah.
So, just be careful that you're not overstressing the Achilles tendon, because that can be very harmful.
Right. And
secondly, some people the heel counter, the back of the shoe.
Yeah.
Sometimes that top there will rub on the Achilles tendon too. So some people will actually take a scissors or a knife and actually cut away some of the material in the back of the shoe. There's a product out there. I don't know how available it is. I know it's available in Amazon. It's called Engo
And go patches.
Yeah, they're these blue patches. They're ovals and they're rectangles. And you peel the white backing off, and you stick this on the shoe, not on your foot, on the shoe. And so this can curve in the heel counter, and your Achilles tendon will move up and down, and it's so smooth and slick that there won't be any issues there. So that can be very helpful, both for the Achilles tendon. It can be used on the side of the heel in your shoe. It can be used under the ball of your foot, on the side of the foot, and so forth. So Ngo patches are inexpensive, and they come in small ovals, large ovals, and rectangles. And
Right.
actually, a heel patch that can be used for Achilles issues too. And they're very inexpensive.
Right. Thanks. Thanks for that, John. And I just would like to end this with a question on just being proactive. I mean, as cliche as it may sound that we say prevention is better than cure, but you've mentioned a very interesting story in your book, which is Nathan's story. I think that's right at the beginning of
Right.
the book. So any tips, John, for people? How do you kind of prevent these things from happening? How do you self-educate yourself to be better prepared?
Well, you self-educate by learning. And if that means reading, fixing your feet, or learning from other people, that's all well and good. But you actually have to have hands-on somewhere. You have to have your hands on your feet and figure out, okay, yes, I have taken very poor care of my toenails, so I'm going to take better care of my toenails, or I'm going to reduce calluses. Most people
Yeah,
have calluses on their feet.
yeah,
Calluses can get blisters underneath them too, and they can be very, very painful. And
yeah.
it's very difficult to lance those and find the fluid under that hardened callus.
Mm,
So reduce your calluses can be very important. One runner in the book mentions his feet are best when the skin is soft as a baby's bottom.
mm.
And so
That's a good one to remember. Yeah,
some people love calluses because they feel they protect them, but they can cause more issues as they thicken and as they build up. Callus is there because there's pressure there, and it builds up there. Um, Prevention means learning what you need ahead of time.
yeah,
So if you've learned about your feet, if you've educated yourself on socks and shoes, and any kind of tools, supplies, equipment that you need in a fanny pack foot care kit or a larger kit. Some people run events where they actually have a crew that
yeah.
helps them. Well, then make sure your crew knows how to
Knows what to do.
knows
Yeah,
what to do also, um, and has the proper supplies for it, because that's also very important. Uh, pre Prevention also means just understanding as much as you can, as much as you can take in about feet and everything going up the body,
yeah.
your gait, your the way that you run. Just you know, prevention never hurt anybody, but if you
True.
don't do prevention, um, there's a saying, and I'm trying to remember it now, but it's like this: the 5 P's. Um, Proper prevention prevents piss poor performance.
Ah, that's a
Okay.
good one.
So that's really good, because if you sign up for a race and you spend money on it, or just are going out for general runs, and you don't take care of yourself, and you are undereducated, so to speak, you can have issues. And then your feet hurt. Sometimes you may stop running for a bit. You sprain your ankle, and you go, well, I'm going to run this race anyway on a sprained ankle. No, there's better ways of doing things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So it can be lifelong learning too, because
Right.
a lot of people, as I said earlier, they say, "Oh, I've never had such and such," but that doesn't mean that you never will.
True. True. Yeah. So thanks a lot, John. This is like really, a lot of information in 1 hour, which is not enough. We can go on and on. And I absolutely love your book, and it's definitely a reference guide for me or any of the runners who would want it. And yeah, and I just feel that, running should not be painful, hiking should not be painful. It's about just making it more fun. And if you have these
Right,
things and if you can prevent it, then of course you're going to have fun. Otherwise, you're just going to remember the bad things
right.
and come out of an event.
Very wise.
So, yeah, and the key is probably happy, healthy feet.
Yep.
That's everyone should probably aim for, to have happy, healthy feet, irrespective of the distance, multi-day, whatever.
Yep. When people ask me to sign their books for them, I generally write best wishes for happy and healthy feet. So what you just
Wow.
said is perfect.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So thank you so much, John. And thank you everyone for joining in and having an interactive set of audience. So thank you so much, everyone.
I will also say here that I have a Facebook page. You can find me. There's Fixing Your Feet Facebook page, and there's my personal page, which is my name. I answer emails too. But if somebody emails me, I typically always answer them, but I won't go on and on and on and on. Sometimes I feel like saying, okay, tell me what the fifth word on the 177th page in the book says, to help me understand that you've got the book and are making some effort. But I understand in India, yes, it takes longer to get copies of the book, but
Yeah.
If enough people start to order it, Amazon might step up and
Correct.
carry it and provide faster service too. I would
Yeah.
love to find an event and be able to help in India. I've never been
We
there.
would love to have you here. In
Yeah.
fact, we'll just grab you, like John, invite John to India to any of these races. Really, it'll be such a boon.
There's only one of me to go around, and flying to India, I think, would be a little bit costly. So I don't know that it'll happen. But like I said, I do answer questions. So I'd be happy to hear
And
it
I
from
will
some of
just
your people.
mention your website details and your book details, after this conversation, so that
Okay.
people can look at it. So thank you. Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you all.